Hello everyone, williamandes here. I'm with Matthew.Schickel. We are on his family farm, and you may hear some background noise. That's just from his dad building his shop on the family farm here. Matt, I appreciate you having me out and doing the interview.
Yeah.
I want to dive into specifically your knowledge. So Matt, tell us a little bit about you, about your history, and really what brought you to this point of wanting to be in land sales, and land lending.
Yeah, never thought I would be here, to be honest with you. It's just crazy how God works, and here I am years later. But grew up in this spot right here where we're standing, played in the pond back here as a kid. A lot of memories made here in this spot, a lot. Grandparents got married in 1946, I believe. Purchased this land shortly after that time period. And even as a kid growing up here, I just got so many memories, right? So I was very blessed to get to be around this through most of my life. Fast forwarding, I went to University of Louisville, graduated in 2008 with my degree in business management. Passionate about finances a little bit, but not a lot. Went to work for some different corporate companies. Got a little bit more in tune with personal finance, through Dave Ramsey. I'm one of his financial coaches. I do one-on-one coaching and just have a passion about helping people with their finances, personal finances, right? And then I was in the Marine Corps for about 10 years, came back from Afghanistan in 2012, and got to coach and mentor some of my junior Marines on finances, and just, again, really liked that. But wanted something different, and a job opening came up at Farm Credit in Rural First. At the time, it was just Farm Credit, and I've been with them ever since. Been with them for about 9 years, and I'm a loan officer here in Harrison County, same county where we're standing in right now, and I get to kind of blend my passion with rural America and personal finances together.
This is a lifestyle.
Absolutely.
And someone that has never been maybe in the farm lifestyle or understood land, it's almost at times an emotional thing. You literally can go out here, get a cup of coffee, and just sit in the stillness of the moment and view a field, maybe a few deer come out and a few geese come out. And I believe God is in nature. And not to get too spiritual, but God created the heavens and the earth, and the earth, as you finance that earth, it's part of the transaction of what you do on a day-to-day business transaction.
Absolutely.
I wanted Matt to tell us a little bit about his expertise in the land and the land financing industry. So we'll just start out these questions here. So the first question for you, Matt, is what is the best benefit of a family owning land versus living in a highly populated area? So let's say Louisville, downtown Jeffersonville, Clarksville, or even in more of like a rural area in like Lanesville or the inner city. What's the benefit of somebody owning that farmland that you found?
Yeah. Well, everybody has their own personality, right? Their own things they like and dislike. Some people like the city life. There's nothing wrong with that. I enjoy it from time to time, but that's not where I want to be all the time, obviously, right? I think most people just like the peace and quiet. I mean, you can look around here, it's quiet. You can't hear anything. All you can hear right now is the construction equipment, right? But at nighttime, you literally can just hear your heartbeat. I know it sounds crazy, but it's super quiet. You just have the freedom to do what you want. I know it sounds kind of funny, but it's nice to be able to just come out here, and if you want to take a pee somewhere, you can just do that, right? So you don't have to worry about neighbors watching you or whatever. You're just off on your own little island, and also you have that sense of community because neighbors out here really do stick together. They rely on one another and they look out for one another. And I think more and more people, due to work-life balance changing and people being able to work remotely, they can live out in the country like this and still work for the big corporations out in the city.
And especially, so we've had the new bridge that went in on the east end. So to your point, someone who says, hey, I'm in the inner city, and the inner city is great for a large demographic. But then someone who's in the inner city who maybe they were raised on a farm, maybe they had farmland in their roots, and they have a desire to go back. Well, now the commute, it's not necessarily that far. My wife, she's from Arizona, and anything within 40 minutes is close out there. So you might have someone that works in downtown Louisville or over in the east end of Louisville, and to get a nice property out here that's expansive, it's not that far with the highway system that we have now.
No, it's not at all. And one of the few good things that came out from COVID is the remote work, and you have people that are on more of a hybrid schedule. Like I know at least where I work at Farm Credit and Rural First, We have employees that go in the office a couple days a week, and the other 3 days they're at home, right? So I mean, you could literally sit, have a cup of coffee on your back deck, right? Look out, see this view, knock out just as much work, maybe even more, to being in the office. And you're seeing that trend increase.
Yeah.
And you're seeing land values because of that. I mean, it's just so sought after. People want to get out, have their peace and quiet, but not be too far where they can go in the city when they want to.
What are you seeing people having a desire to move on to land? What are you seeing that is keeping people back from making that decision, making that move?
Yeah, I think a couple things. One is just the educational piece of it, right? Either people have no idea that land is, different when it comes to financing. And then some people do, they hear the horror stories. Oh my gosh, you have to put 50% down. I don't have 50%. I'm not even going to go and even try, right? So you have that. And also you have, like I just got done mentioning, it is very popular right now for people to come out here where we're sitting today to want to own land out in the country. But they think that values have just gotten crazy. And they have. I mean, they really have. There's some places you're like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that land just sold for that much. However, there's some deals out there to be had, right? And if you have a good real estate agent, or honestly, if you really know someone who's selling land before it can go to the market, you can still find a good deal on land. But I will say it's becoming further and further the norm to find a good deal on land. That's the two most popular things, I think. It's just not educated on what it takes, and two, just the fear to think, oh, there's no way I can afford that.
Right.
Well, I'm sure people thought that 20 years ago about land. They thought, there's no way I can afford that. Well, I bet the people who bought land 20 years ago are like, I'm glad I bought that land.
Well, and it's amazing the paradigm shift, because 50 years ago, people were like, we want to move into inner cities, and they called the farmer the old dumb farmer. But that farmer held on to his land. And that farmer is the wealthiest guy in town because he held on to that asset.
Sure, absolutely.
So with that, even like you said, the education piece is, it can be daunting to move from a 3-bedroom, 2-bath to go to your own piece of land and build your own piece of property. Like, that's a lot of change in somebody's life.
It is.
But you see that every year where someone has that desire and is strong enough to just say, hey, we're going to go all in and build our own homestead.
Absolutely. One of the other things I do some financial coaching with people one-on-one to help them with their finances. And you can do anything you set your mind to, physically, with your finances, whatever, but you really have to buckle down and have a budget, know what your, thresholds are on what you're going to, because I crush a lot of dreams when it comes to construction loans, especially. People are like, oh, I want to build this house for, $300,000. It's just not feasible, right? You can do it. You just really have to buckle down, know what your budget is, and just save.
To your point earlier, is people think, it's going to be way out of price range, and sometimes it is. But if they wait long enough with the market and with things shifting in different ways, is that deal does arise. So they're saying, I may not be able to find that, but with the right agent, they can find that property. It just may take a little bit of time, whereas others are willing and able to get a loan, proper amount, and be ready to pull the trigger.
100%, William. And that, I'm glad you said that, because you need to start with a lender. Obviously, we are the best at it. I'm not just saying that we are. We are a more conservative lender. It's harder to get a loan with me than it is a normal bank. But land is our niche. We're very good at construction. And I can't tell you how many people come to me and they, ask some questions, feel around like, hey, what's down payment? What's rate? Yada, yada. And they never apply for the loan. And then they call me back and say, hey, it's for sale. We want to put an offer in. Well, we're flying. We're trying to get everything in. And literally within sometimes as quick as 4 hours to a day, they call me back and say, oh, sorry, never mind, the land, it's already sold, right? So my point is, you want to go in and have your ducks in a row, and a good real estate agent will tell their customer to say, hey, go see your lender, get your pre-approval so we know you're locked and loaded.
Absolutely.
And that way, when that property comes up, you can strike, because it's hard. You get in multiple offer situations. You sometimes you compete against cash, right? There's just a lot of factors. So you want to do your homework and be prepared.
So you talked about your passion in finances. So personal finances leading into land finances. So was that partly being raised on a farm, being raised outdoors a little bit with that aspect?
Yeah, a little bit. It's funny when you said that. I was in 4-H. I had a pig, right?
Oh, awesome.
So I had several pigs. I named them Ham and Bacon, or their name's Ham and Bacon. But my parents, they did that for a lot of reasons. But one was to teach me about personal finances, right? So I had to buy the pig, which at the time I was really young. I didn't have the money per se. So mom and dad gave me a temporary loan, right? And I had to account for the feed. We had a fake water bill, if I remember right. Just certain things I had to give to the pig, and I'd keep a record of all that stuff. And then when I sold it at the 4-H auction, of course, I would have my proceeds, my net proceeds, right, after all the expenses. But all joking aside, that was really a good lesson for me to learn as a kid about just basic finances, right, Absolutely. On your expenses and your what you bring in and such. So yeah, some of that kind of came through that. Also, I'm a financial coach for Dave Ramsey. I know that he has some different philosophies on debt, but I do believe in his overall concept of just being very smart with your finances, having a budget, right? Living within your means. And that is the type of lender we are. We're very strict. We never want to get someone in a situation where they couldn't repay their debt. And although that can be a challenge sometimes working with underwriters, I appreciate that about us as an association, because I don't have to really ever worry that somebody's not going to pay their bills, right? Unless something just crazy happens with their life. We're not going to lend someone money that should not have it lent to.
That's fantastic. Yep. So a person has land. Let's say a gentleman has 5 acres, 10 acres, 100 acres, and he wants to build. How does that process work from having a piece of land to transitioning into building on that land?
Yeah.
And financing that piece, however that piece, making that easier for that landowner to build the house of their dreams?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? And it's a very loaded question too, because there's so many different ways you could skin that cat. I'll just give you some real life examples, okay, what I've seen people do. I've had folks come in and buy the land outright with all their cash. Great. I'm a stay out of the debt type of guy. Trust me. Even though I'm in the lending business, I like to see people keep their debt at bay. That's great, but it has limitations, because if they tied up a lot of their cash into the land, we sometimes have difficulty getting them approved for a construction loan, because so much cash is required when you build a home. Okay, but it can work. Some other people will come to me. We finance the land. We do as little as 15% down on a fully fixed rate. Okay. That's very hard to find in the marketplace. Very hard. 15% down, fully fixed rate. Now, it does depend on the applicant's credit. Okay. So credit goes into play on that. But either way, by them putting a little bit down, very protected by that fully fixed rate, they can start stockpiling cash. So then what happens, they come back to me 6 months. I've even had customers come back to me 4 years later. All the money they put down on that land payment is equity they're building up in the land. Okay. And that's important, because when they come back to build, we capitalize off the equity, and it counts towards their down payment, or might even eliminate their down payment on the construction loan. So there's a lot of different ways that can be worked, but that's probably the most common, William. Somebody comes to me, we finance the land. Depending on their financial situation, we try to put as little money down as possible, knowing we want them to save, come back to build, and they're in a position to do so. But again, every situation is different. I mean, some people already have the cash. They might put 50% down on the land, what have you. But that's the most common approach. Buy the land, save the money, come back a couple years, and then they capitalize off of that equity in the land. And sometimes the appreciation of the land that's went up in value to build their home.
Well, and even to that too. So buying a farm. So transitioning over to someone who wants to have land, then build on that land. I was raised, my grandfather, he has a farm in Oldham County, Kentucky. And my father, he bought a farm. Someone who has the land, they realize that you can literally go out, get a side-by-side or a four-wheeler and drive all over the land. Do what you want with that land. The freedom to realize that if I have enough equity in this property, that I can pull from that equity and I can build that home, and I can literally do whatever I want to do. Like your dad's shop, for example, right here. He had a vision, he had a dream to build. And from that seed that was planted, then he said, I want to make my man cave.
Sure.
And here we are. I think that's what's really neat about land, is you can have a vision and a dream, and it's not held in by property boundaries.
100%. I'm glad you brought that up too, right? So I personally have experienced this on other properties that I've purchased in the past. So I do some real estate investing, rental properties and such. And one thing I like about us is, a lot of people that have land want more land, right? So it's very common. And these cases come up more than you think, that you might even own 2 acres, and the neighbor who's a farmer, what have you, comes to you and says, hey, I got 30 acres. I'm wanting to sell. You've been a good neighbor. Would you be interested in buying my 30 acres? Well, the great thing about us, if they have that loan with us, or whether they don't, if they just own it outright, we can capitalize and use the equity in that 2 acres, for example, to help purchase the 30. So it's possible they might not even have a down payment when it comes to acquiring more land around them. So I only say that, like, when, you know, a rental property I bought, it was a house on 5 acres, and there was some other acreage that joined that, and I wanted to capitalize on the equity in my home in 5 acres to purchase that. No can do. I would have to refinance my loan, lose that great rate that I got 2 or 3 years ago, right? And they would not have to do that with us. So we have a lot of options to help people kind of be outside the box. We're an outside the box lender, right? And we work with people who are outside the box, who want to buy more land, who might have a house in 30 acres and they want to build a shop like what's being constructed right here. We can do that for them. We have options for them.
What is the criteria looked at for loan approval? So you talked about credit score, obviously. So what are other criteria that we're looking at for loan approval?
Debt to income is a really big one. Debt to income is very big. We get a financial snapshot of what they look like through a balance sheet, right? And I'm talking a very simple balance sheet, assets and liabilities, like what you own versus what you owe. So we look at your liquidity, you know, how much cash that you have. We look at your net worth, you know, what, like I said, what you own, which compared to what you owe on. We look at your debt to income. We can get creative sometimes with that. So we get the guys who talk about the side by side, right? They come to me, they're right there on that threshold, but I tell them, hey, if you sell the side by side, we can make this work. So and that just lowers that overall monthly debt obligation that we would want to see to stay within our ratios, and it can make it work. But yeah, that's the big one. And again, I talked about this before, but cash is the biggest one, William. I mean, anytime you're dealing with land, you had to put more money down. That's just the fact of the matter. If I would explain why, in my little simple brain, land is just risky. I mean, think about it. If you're a mortgage company and you're lending on a house where somebody goes to bed and puts their head down every night to sleep, and they also own this land over here that it's not built on yet, and things go south in their finances, what's the first thing they're going to quit paying on? It's not going to be the house where they're sleeping typically. That's usually the last resort, right? But land is kind of one of those things, well, we haven't built on it yet. Things went south on our finances. We just have to give up on the payments, right? So it's just a riskier product, so therefore we require you to put more money down. And again, relatively speaking, in the marketplace, we are the lowest amount down. So if a traditional bank does do land, you're looking at anywhere from 25 to 35% down, plus on an adjustable rate.
I really want to thank Matt for the opportunity to come out to his family farm and shoot this video. If you are looking for rural farmland, any land that's outside of the central core area where it's highly populated, if it's bare land, if it's some land where you want some peace and quiet for you and your family on a piece of acreage, reach out to Matt and I will have his contact information down below. Hope you all have a wonderful day, and I hope you enjoyed this video.